So you have gamma waves are the fastest waves we have. They have the smallest amplitude. Some people do believe, even though it's disputed, that these are connected to higher consciousness. Our theta waves are present when we are alerted, attentive, focusing on things. This to be able to have a frequency of context that some people believe that keeps us in a chronic state of stress, the theta waves. The alpha waves is being able to be here now, like we looked at with the mindfulness. Meditation, being here now, being in the present. They help to aid us in mental coordination, alertness, and calmness. The theta waves, this occurs in sleep, but also in deep meditation. This is a powerful way to access learning, memory, and intuition, which is why we looked at the benefits of mindfulness meditation affecting learning over time. Now the delta waves are generated in deep meditations, also in dreamless moments of non-sleep, where I call it deep sleep, when you're not really dreaming. And when we talked the other day about the deep sleep, entering deep sleep really gives you a sense of, one, sleeping well, and a sense of inner satisfaction of who you are. Very attentive in healing processes. So reaching the delta wave aspect can really help us reach our capacities for healing. This is how we can look at it from a megahertz point of view. Today with apps, there's a lot of different apps that can help you bring different frequencies to your brain, by the way. So, we know a person who very much enjoys always having frequencies in his ears as much as possible. In his morning working out, he has an app that he uses that he regulates his different brain waves. Yes, in a formal way of practice, when you're sitting and learning that you don't have to itch yourself to be fidgeting, they might have chose that. But in an environment where you're out and you're seeing something happen, right? Doesn't mean, I have to accept that because I'm mindful. Or rather, how would I want to respond to this situation? And then you use the various tools in your dimensions to do that, depending on the circumstance. If a glass fell and it broke on the floor, do you scream at your child for doing it? Or do you find that you can respond to that moment? Right? By engaging the child, asking them, that happens, next time let's be careful, but let's go and get the broom, the mop, and clean it up together. As opposed to, really, I told you this the third time I'm telling you, don't put it over there, and that's a reaction rather than a response. Correct? So hence, the first behavioral tool is mindfulness. That ability to be present, to be aware of what's going on, accepting the situation as it is, and then choosing to decide what to do about it. The other one is a therapeutic aspect known as emotion regulation. Emotion regulation is learning how to pay attention to what's going on with our emotions and learning and taking the time to develop skills on how to put those in actions. Distress tolerance is, again, a therapeutic modality on learning how to deal with stress and putting yourself in different stressful situations and developing the skills and the tools, which usually involve mindfulness. And nonetheless, we have vocabulary today and separateness for things. And the last one is interpersonal effectiveness. Again, another very beautiful field nowadays on how do we communicate with each other? How do we develop better tools, better principles to communicate? All these four things happen in the mind. It has nothing to do with your brain, right? It happens in the mind. Mindfulness, we just looked at. But let's look at it a little bit again, and we'll come back again to the idea of non-judgment, but also here the idea of patience. Patience. It takes time, no need to rush things, especially if this is new for you, if these practices are new for you. Allowing yourself to have that patience with yourself and with others as you're stepping into the world of responsiveness, not reactiveness. So correct trust takes time to build. And so that we first came, and the first day, if you've never been here before, there's enough trust in terms of nature, thank you. Even that day it was raining, so, some of you who arrived on Friday, it was raining. It was not the most magical, beautiful, natural day. And so that could have affected a certain trust, but there's a space, there's something you read on the internet. So you came with a trust, but now notice a few days later, the sense of trust is different. Here we can take what Ron was mentioning just a little bit over less than an hour ago about the fact that you've been to so many places, and here, just after a few days, there's a different trust to the process, not so much at Zoya, which is Zoya provided the space for and the context for the pathway, but trust in the principles, trust in this direction that you can take your life through. And yes, we haven't necessarily spoken specifically on how to take this context of what we were doing here so that you can apply it in your daily life, but I'm slowly trying to touch on it, right? And when it comes to the food cycle of things, it's as simple as just remembering the things that I've been trying to share with you again and again. Are you having water and do you have greens? And yes, the best form of getting enough greens into your system is in the form of juicing or in smoothie. You just pack a lot more green nutrients when you juice them than if you cook them or eat them. But nonetheless, you can ask yourself, how often was I having greens and water in my daily life before I came here? And so the big secret is, what do we give you in the morning juice? What color is it? Green. It's green. What do we have everywhere?
Green.
Water. Water in the form of the teas or herbal teas that we drink a lot. Water in the form of just the water that we're drinking. Whether it's alkalinized or not, secondary, just noticing. And again, the idea of trust, this trust in those two principles. So that when you go home, you take those two with you. Don't need to change all of the kitchen for that, but can I have more greens and more water? Can I take the time to quiet myself, whether in the morning or the evening, as Ameer was pointing out, taking a walk? Acceptance, we looked at that a lot, and here it comes again, that aspect that you can ask yourself, how often do you feel that you're resisting the world that you're in? Whether it's personal, your personal environment with your body, right? How many of you look in the mirror and want to change what's going on there? That means you're not yet accepting. I'm not saying that there's no reason to try to create a pathway to get rid of pain, to get rid of a disease, but if you're not willing to accept what you have, how is it going to change? Right? And then the last one is letting go. This is a very important part. Whether you like it or not, you're going to die. And to believe that it's not going to happen is ridiculous, and to ignore it is also ridiculous. And so I use the end as a means to help us appreciate the direction of what we do with our lives as it is. Because if I can accept what's happening, I can also let go of certain expectations and ideas and just enjoy the direction I'm walking. And do your best. Again, this is not about dropping away the responsibility, but it's just adding a layer so that we can enjoy those things that we're doing. Does that make sense? How does this resonate, taking the words on the screen and using them out in the real room in front of us? Anyone has any thoughts or comments?
Well, letting go is the hardest.
Yes. Yes. It is. That's why I went all the way to the end. And in today's culture, especially the Western culture, we don't look at the end. In Eastern cultures, I mean, even here in the Arab culture where you do have your family and you can see, but especially in the United States of America, the idea of old age and death is like I don't want to look at that. Can I push that away? Whether I push the old people away and I don't even look at them, I just stuff them somewhere so I don't have to face them at all. Compared to the intelligence and wisdom that can be offered to us as we get older, right? Letting go of an idea that I'm going to stay young. When I started yoga and I knew for myself, that's like, it wasn't that I wasn't going to get old, it was more about, can I get old in a better way? I know I'm going to be 90 and 100, but can I just be 90 and 100 and still enjoy what I'm doing with my body? And Ron shared with me about your mom, and look, I would like to be that when I'm older, right? I don't want to be stuffed away. but I gotta be able to accept and let go of ideas in order to get there. These are all mind, because these are the mental aspects that are playing on us, that are affecting the directions in how we're going to take what we learn here and use them out there. So the power of mind that we're using now is to have these skills here with our mental facilities, as well as the tools and the practices that we learned. Most of us sadly end up in an autopilot mode. And we come here, we step a little bit out of the autopilot mode. Sometimes you're going to go out of here for a couple of days, maybe you're able to maintain that. But will you fall back into autopilot mode? You know, Yusuf pointed out to us, I'm going to go back to the office. And so he knows for himself, having gone through, that it's easy to fall into autopilot mode. And so we just have to talk about that, because autopilot is when we are just not allowing ourselves to be present, be aware.
Let me simplify. It's what you do as a habits every day without thinking about it. This is basically the autopilot mode. And this belongs to whatever we call comfort zone. We are very comfortable doing the same thing every day. So why should we change? Because change is difficult. So this is the autopilot mode, is when you are sitting and do what you do every day. Don't change. I don't want to exercise. I don't want to eat less. I don't want to be healthy, whatever. I want to get drunk every day. I mean, this is part of my autopilot mode. The difficulty is the change. I worked for GE for 4 years, and we had a chairman called Jack Welch. And I worked with Jack Welch indirectly and sometimes directly. And he had 13 rules. He called the Jack Welch rules. He was one of the most successful CEO in America and American history. He said, change before you are forced to change. Change before you are forced to change. Once you are forced to change, it means you are in bad shape. Very simple.
Yeah.
Like when like my sister wake up, I had a cancer. So she has to change her life. Because she is forced to change.
And when you have a more focus and more attentiveness, the sense of enjoyment is actually steeping into us more. And it does require a sense of responsibility and a sense of feeling like I'm out of comfort to do these practices, to do a meditation every day, to get up and go for a bike ride when you're here, or to get up and do a yoga practice every morning or a meditation practice is an effort. Right? It's a lot easier to fall into the autopilot of, I'm just going to sleep in late, or I'm going to sleep until I have to go to work, or even just the autopilot is like, oh, I have to go to work, like as if someone forced you, as opposed to changing that attitude and becoming aware. It's like, you know what, I'm grateful that I got this job, because it pays for that. If you don't like your job, then change it. Right? Just change it. Oh, but it's too hard because it's an autopilot. I already have it. Who knows the uncertainties of what will happen? The flight or flight mode is the direction that most of us tend to live our lives in. In today's culture, we don't have a tiger, but we all face a lot of things that we feel are extremely stressful to us. That's why I brought the work mode in a sense. Your work feels like it's stressful for you. Your family can feel like it's stressful for you. Making a change can feel like it's stressful for you. Often we don't even recognize that the desire to help ourselves become better puts us in a fight or flight mode. Right? And if you go back to the 4 things we looked at, the mindfulness and acceptance and letting go and the trust, then all of a sudden we're able to take the desire to change, the desire to improve, the desire to create an experience that is suiting for us, and shift that idea of change from stressful to mindful, and move away from fight or flight mode. You can easily move from fight or flight mode by paying attention to your breathing, which is mindfulness, which is why we brought mindfulness. So it's fight or flight mode in today's experience of our body is as easy to transform by bringing awareness. Because the fight or flight mode that our body goes through is because we are spending our time in such misawareness. And yes, to say that somehow the human being way back years ago, that there was only a tiger to be in flight. Well, no, you think, do you want to live like that? Did you realize that just 100 years ago, 100 years ago, the richest human being in the world did not have a working toilet inside the house? Yet today, everyone has a working toilet in the house, but sadly, we're not nearly as content as human beings as they were 100 years ago. It's a perception that we can learn to control with our mind, to appreciate. The attitude of gratitude is a powerful form of changing fight or flight to a rejuvenation mode. In many ways, there's things that are going to trigger us and they're going to create a state of being. And that's going to be true for the experience of life that we have. So it's about being able to understand the triggers that we have and how do we create a capacity for action, which is responding, rather than a reaction, which is non-mindful. It's in our reaction mode that we continue and take all the conversations we have throughout the week. It's the reactive experience that sends a different hormonal homeostasis to the body, changes the hormonal level in our system, which then causes, whether you tend to take the Dr. Ameer's perspective on emotions towards action, or whether this one, which is what will trigger you, what are the things that came into your consciousness, whether it was a sound, whether it was the way someone looked at you, whether it was a taste, whether it was a responsibility that was dumped into your shoulders if you're in an office environment. What was the trigger? Where were you at? How did this trigger affect your state of being? Right? Being aware what's going on with me. Right? You could experience the tension of your bosses take the work environment, since a lot of us are in sun. You can take the aspects that the boss comes over, dumps something into your table, says you gotta do this, and then it sends you into a state of frenziness. Right? So you just become aware, mindful, and then you use the mindfulness to decide, okay, wow, you caused me stress, yes. Or this causes me to feel whatever I'm feeling. Can I accept it? Can I trust myself to be able to do it? Can I ask for help? Can I be grateful? And if I do these things, if I bring these things into my conscious state of being, how will it change the outcome? Right? These are all happening in the mind. And if I'm paying attention, if I'm being mindful, then I can change the outcome rather than deal with an outcome. How does that resonate with people? Right? And so we have this power. And we're learning to harness this power by taking the time to be able to be in environments that let us access this realization that, oh wow, I have a beautiful mind, I have a beautiful experience, that I can be with the world. As Dr. Ameer said, life is easy. Right? Yes, suffering is, as the Buddha said, but I'm causing it. So if I'm causing the suffering, then that means that life is easy. How can I stop causing the suffering? And so through your mind, you can control the body. We saw yesterday with Amy Cuddy, with your body, you can also control the mind. And by having these tools, simple tools, 2 minutes, as Amy Cuddy said, 2 minutes, as I'm pointing out, 5 minutes in mindfulness, 2 to 5 minutes, and you can transform what's going on. You can easily go to any quiet environment in any moment that you're dealing with attention and give yourself the power pose. You can, in any moment, simply put your feet on the ground, recapture your connection to your breathing, accept what's happening, and then see what the direction you want to go through. Right? It doesn't take more than a few seconds. But will we remember to do those things? Will we actually take the time to do those things? Correct? Proper nutrition, support of nutrients in the body can help. They can help. But unless you're dealing with cancer, some extreme disease, to be able to handle triggers so that the outcome is more responsive is in your hands. That's mind power. So all the tools and everything is about helping to imprint this, but for me, mind power is understanding this formula and applying it. And if you apply mind power regularly, then these will be there for you. And then you might not need the formal practices, because you're making informal practices of your life on a regular basis. Right? Conscious and awareness. We come to these environments because we haven't done that. We have these spaces to remind ourselves of what we said earlier. You already know this. And so optimal habits are simple things like I should mention, and I'll keep mentioning them and say them over and over again. Water drinking from nutrition. Bringing good nutrients to our body, which begins with greens. Hence the beautiful food pyramid. It is not about eliminating. It's simply about adding those things. And enjoy, right? It was nothing about don't indulge and don't enjoy yourself. It was more about, hey, can you just bring a lot of this? So to take the nutrients and the things in terms of food that we have in our kitchen and at home. Then the next aspect is like, do I have exercise? Am I really moving my body? I talk about nutrition from a point of view of 4 primary foods. It has nothing to do with what you put into your mouth if you want to have a good, healthy experience of living. The first primary food is exercise. And Arjan gave us the idea here for the last 2 days. You're walking. You didn't do it before, and how that influenced you. Each and every one of you have been doing more exercise here, perhaps, than you do at home, and you can see how that translates. Exercise is not some idea of some personal trainer or some YouTube personality that this is exercise. Exercise is moving your body in your way, however you want to do it, for 30 minutes. Do you walk your dog? Fantastic, that's like exercise. Right? Are you walking with your child? Awesome, that's exercise. Start there. If it inspires you to go do something else because you're enjoying it, fantastic. Then maybe you're doing some yoga, maybe you're doing some Pilates, maybe you're doing some swimming, maybe you're doing basketball playing, maybe you're doing anything else, but exercise is moving your body. How many of us move our body? Notice we said from day one, the biggest thing that made human beings suffer is the thing we're sitting on right now. If you go in Asia and you go in India and those cultures, if you see older people, they are functioning much better than people in the West. Primarily because they don't have chairs. They don't have sofas at home. They don't have chairs like this. They sit on the floor. They know how to get up and down from the floor. And as a consequence, as we see now, like the younger generation has other issues that we see in the West. It doesn't mean they don't have their issues, by the way. It only means that this side of the physical body is in there, the ability of moving my body. Right? Exercise, first primary food. Next primary food is work. You might be rich and don't have to work, but there's something of value in doing work. Notice that even if you went to a monastery or anything like that, they want you to do something like clean the toilets or work the garden. There's something about work that makes you feel satisfied. Now, most of us need the cash that we get from our job. And so we go back to what I said earlier. If you don't like your job, change it. Or change your mindset, right? I may not like my boss, but I like how much money I'm getting paid, so I'll deal with my boss and I'll keep my job. And now I don't have to wake up every Monday hating going to work, right? The challenges I may have with my fellow employees, I can just look at them as opportunities to increase my capacities for feeling good about my skills, right? About work. Relationship. Do you enjoy the time with the person you're with? And we're not just talking about family relationships and those, but it's very important as a human beings to be satisfied with intimacy. If you're a person who likes being alone, fantastic, you feel satisfied. But if you're alone because you're afraid or hate other people because of pain that happened, then no amount of green food and diets is going to help change your health. That makes sense? It's not for me to give you the answer, it's only for me to make you ask the question. Do I feel satisfied with my way I'm moving my body? Do I feel satisfied with the way I'm doing my work? Do I feel satisfied with the person I'm with or the person I want to be with? exercise, work, relationship, and the last one is spirituality. Do I feel that there's something larger than myself? Again, if you're living the optimal life that you're living, you're as happy as you want to be, you sleep as good as you want to sleep, you're enjoying your days, then who cares about any of this? Right? But if you're not feeling like you're living the optimal life that you want, then chances are in one of these 4 dimensions, there's a lack. And if you're feeling satisfied in all these 3, but it's like, well, I don't believe in a divine form or that, it's like, well, maybe that's the reason your life doesn't feel as optimal as you want. I did not tell you you needed to believe in this, that, or the other. I simply invited you to recognize the question, do you feel that there's something larger than you? And hence why I brought the story about the Buddha, about pointing out, like, well, here a girl comes, she just gives him water. She's not trying to get anything back. She's not interested if it's going to make you feel better. I see you're thirsty, here you go. And the idea of giving and doing things for other people just for that sake of doing it for them creates a sense of peace, enjoyment, and satisfaction in a way that unless you do it, you can't really understand how much it is. And the reason you're doing it for other people is because suddenly there is something bigger than you. And however words you may want to put them into that category. People who do come from traditional faith beliefs tend to have that side much more satisfied for them. Right? Those of you who come, and I've spoken to a few of you, and it very much touches you, that sense of religion, we'll use that, or not the religion, which is the establishment, but the sense of being religious. The sense that there's a faith in me. Notice faith is very different than belief. Faith is an acknowledgement deep inside that exists. Belief is believing that something exists. I don't believe in God, I have a faith that God exists. 2 different words, and yet completely different meanings, right? You can feel the difference between I have faith that there's a God, I believe that there's a God. Right? Notice we didn't use that word, we just used the question. I believe that there's something larger. These 4 primary foods is the basis for my nutrition work. But then we'll go back to how do I create optimal habits? Optimal habits is, can I change my mindset about what's happening with my relationship and with my work? Can I do something with my body? And can I pay attention to the world around me and recognize that it's not just me? Because there is a bigger world than me. These are all mind power. Developing a growth mindset is really about helping to change the vocabulary. That's again another thing that we're touching towards the end of our time together that we looked at from the beginning. If I change the words that I'm using, I can change the way I relate to myself and the world around me. Rather than saying, I'm not good at this, I can say, what am I missing? Rather than saying, it's good enough, is it really my best work? I just can't do this, I'm going to train my brain. The words you use is the communication that you have with yourself, which is the effect that you're having on yourself. And you can choose to have a different way of looking at words. And words come from the mind. So mind power is accessing our power to realize that I can use a different choice of vocabulary. And again, you get all these PowerPoints again. My friends can do it, I will learn from them. Other people could do it, means I could do it also. This is the mind, body, spirit connection. The body is our learning tool. It has our systems, has our brain as an organ, has the other cells, has our senses. These are the accessibilities that we have. Without this body, I can't be in this relationship. Right? So I have it, but then the mind creates the capacity of having a sense of personality, has a sense of ability to have a will to drive me, to have a conscious and a subconscious that I can access and influence. That then allows me to connect to the observer that knows my deep purpose, knows that there's a meaning beyond myself, and allows for a sense of love, not as a limited sense of just to one person, but as love to me and the world, which is the love that is keep being used in the other individuals that spoke about, that you are loved. There's a bigger thing that loves you, that takes care of you. And we come back to the word we had earlier, trust. Trust. If I can have that sense of trust that there is this ability of giving me what I want, then when you are dealing with challenges in your physical health, challenges in your financial world, challenges in your personal environments, you can fall back into what are the things that I can control with my mindset? What are the things that I can accomplish with my body? Am I closing off, or am I allowing myself to be open? How am I using the words, my consciousness, and how am I coming to this sense of trust and love? Mind power. I'm aware of my body. I know that I love this, but I also know it's not going to make me feel good in a few hours. Compared to this, it's also flavorful, maybe not the greatest taste, but I'm going to feel much better. And then she uses her own trust, mindset, choosing, action to decide. And if you were to decide to eat a meal that might make you feel uncomfortable, you'll be able to eat it and be okay with the discomfort, knowing that you made the choice. Which again, obviously the body and the discomfort, you deal with that discomfort, but there's a different dealing with that discomfort compared to before having the same skills you built in that first time.